went out one night, I got drunk, I had a fight with a cab driver. It turned into a felony arrest, and I wound up on Rikers Island in New York City, which is a very scary place. And it does scare a lot of people straight. It didn't scare me straight. It scared me temporarily because the whole thing is rooted in denial. I had to get humble and ask for help. If anybody's out there listening, I know that asking for help can be difficult and humbling, but at some point it's absolutely necessary to ask for help.
On this episode of Irreplaceable Truths, we're going to have a very deep and crucial conversation about mental health and addiction. If you believe you need help or you know someone who needs help, please do not be afraid to ask. Be humble, let your walls down, and know that there are people out there that want to help you. This profession needs you, the animals need you, and the families need you. Welcome, everybody. Another episode of Irreplaceable Truths. Our theme today is going to be addiction, recovery, and mental health, unfiltered for all of us veterinary professionals. Today, I want to introduce Thomas McAlinden. Today's guest is a sober companion in Los Angeles and New York with over 30 years in recovery, more than a decade guiding others through addiction, relapse, and hope. From his roots in Queens, New York, to running recovery support in two of America's toughest cities, Thomas's story is one of second chances and helping others find their own. Thomas, welcome from the East Coast. How are you doing?
Hi, Gershon. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and talk to you guys.
Oh, no problem. I guess let's just have you give a little Cliff Note bio about you, and then we can dive into this episode with. I have so many questions because, as we've discussed in the past, the profession's really hurting and needs as much help as possible.
Well, I'll try to sum up 58 years of my life in a little blurb if I can. As some of your viewers might be able to tell by my accent, I'm a native New Yorker. So I grew up in Queens, New York. And I can sum up my family dynamic by simply stating at one time or another, every single member of my immediate family has had addiction issues, alcoholism, mental health crises. My father was in the bar business when I was a kid growing up in Queens. And so I started hanging out in Irish pubs as a young child, which is probably not a good start for the average 10-year-old. But it was a way of life in my family. So I started hanging out in bars as a young child. And I learned a lot about the drinking life as a young kid, watching my father, watching my older brother, and they had serious problems with alcoholism. But I always had this thought in my head that I would be the one in the family to escape addiction issues. Now, I had this thought even before I picked up my first drink. I was already planning how to drink and get away with it, so to speak. And that's not normal thinking for a 12-year-old, right? So growing up in an alcoholic family or any kind of family with dysfunction will make any kid, to a certain extent, a little bit neurotic, right? And I was wound up super tight as a young kid. Anxiety, fear, there was always chaos in my house. My parents were great people, but they were sick. They had addiction. So I don't blame them anymore for what happened. But back then, it was a source of major uncertainty in my life. And I was looking for an escape, even as a young child. And I knew that the escape would come in a bottle because I saw everybody else doing it. It's pretty much all I saw now. I mean, I went to school, I played sports, I had a lot of friends, I was kind of popular, I had great hair back then. So I had my first drink. What's that? Yeah, no. Yeah. So my curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up my first drink around 13 years old. And the first time I drank, I realized right away why people drank. I liked the effect produced by alcohol, okay? It took away fear, boredom, worry, frustration. It made the world a safer, happier place. And that was only after maybe 3 glasses of beer at that young age. And I knew that day I had finally found something that worked. Now, when I say worked, what I mean is that it took away all that negative stuff that was bouncing around in my head, okay? So as a young teenager, I drank mainly on weekends. I went to school during the week. I did very well, but fairly quickly, alcoholism and addiction is a progressive illness, okay? So for some people, the progression can be slow. For some people, it could be quite quick. For me, it was very fast. By the time I was 16, I was drinking every day because once I figured out why walk around life sober if I don't have to, right? Why can't I just walk around life with a couple of drinks? Then I started smoking marijuana and, that made me feel good as well. And I was still able to kind of hold on to things and show up for life to a certain extent, okay? But by the time I was 17, meanwhile, my whole family is drinking around me. And, we're all trying to keep our head above water, so to speak, So, but there was a lot of love in my family. I don't want to make my family seem to be this evil empire. It really wasn't. They were great people, but they just were sick, So I had my first bout of alcoholic poisoning when I was 17. Now, what that means is that I drank so much one day that my mother got very concerned and brought me to a local hospital. Okay. I was very intoxicated. I don't remember a lot about that day other than waking up in a hospital in Queens and I was restrained to a bed. Okay. And I woke up and I said, wow, how did I get here? I don't remember going there. And then a nice doctor came into the room and he asked me a question which nobody had ever asked me before. He said, young man, why do you drink so much? Now, he kind of caught me off guard with that question, and I wasn't sure how to answer it. I think I might have said something like, I don't know, because I didn't know. I mean, I might have said, well, what makes you think I drink too much? But, I don't think I would say that. But I mean, I didn't know why I drank so much that day. So I didn't know I had alcoholism at that point. Okay. So anyway, I get released from the hospital. I go back home. About a month later, it happens again. I go back to the same hospital. The same doctor is there, and he remembered me. And he said, wow, young man, you're here again. Why are you drinking so much? And again, I was like, I really don't know, doctor. Doesn't everybody drink too much once in a while, right? So after the second visit, I took what's called the pledge. The Irish did that a lot. We took the pledge to stop drinking, okay? So I did that, and I lasted, amazingly enough, for 7 months. I did not drink on my own. Now, at this time, my father joined Alcoholics Anonymous, which was a big deal in my family because we never thought he would quit drinking. But my father went to AA. He quit the bar business, probably a good idea. So I heard about AA at that time, but there was no way I was going to go to an AA meeting with my father as a teenager. So I managed to not drink for 7 months with no support, no clinical support, no 12-step meeting support, just on willpower. Now, looking back, it was a pretty sad time for myself because I cut off my friends because they were all drinking and getting high. And I would go to high school, come home, and stay home and lift weights every day. And that was my treatment plan, right? And I don't know how long that would have lasted, but what happened was during that time, a tragedy happened in my family. My older brother, John, who battled a serious drug addiction on top of his drinking, my brother John came home one day in June of 1985. Me and my father helped my brother to bed. He was in bad shape. We didn't know how bad a shape he was in. I went back into the bedroom about 2 hours later, and my brother was dead. My brother died of an overdose. He asphyxiated, and he was gone. I found him like that, and it was incredibly traumatic. I picked up a drink that night and I decided, I can't deal with this situation sober, started drinking again. So my brother's death really pushed me into a dangerous place, not just with my drinking, but with my mental health. Okay. I spiraled into a very bad depression, guilt. I blame myself for his death. I should have done more to help him. And I spiraled to the point where my parents sent me to see a psychiatrist, which was my first time talking to a professional clinician. So I saw a clinician, and after the second visit, seeing this psychiatrist, she asked me to talk about my drinking. And I said to her, well, I don't know what that's got to do with anything. I was trying to deflect attention away from my drinking. But I told her how much I drank, and I was honest. Amazingly enough, I was honest with this woman. And I'm still shocked that I was honest with her. And she told me, Tommy, you might be an alcoholic. So I never went back to see her, okay, because she was approaching a subject I was not ready to talk about. So anyway, the next 10 years is just filled with drinking, getting high, chaos in my family. After my brother's death, my mother also suffered serious mental issues, and she wound up in psychiatric wards for the rest of her life, to be honest with you. And it was really sad. So I got into a major, what we call in Queens, a major jackpot in 1987. By a jackpot, I mean I got into trouble with the law. I went out one night. I got drunk. I had a fight with a cab driver. It turned into a felony arrest, serious felony arrest. And that was the first time I was facing consequences, like real consequences from my drinking. And I wound up on Rikers Island in New York City, which is a very scary place. And it does scare a lot of people straight. It didn't scare me straight. It scared me temporarily. And then my father bailed me out of Rikers and I drank again. Okay. So I fought that case for about a year. And I avoided prison, but I paid a price. I paid a big legal price for that. And I did the next 5 years on probation with New York State, a felony probation, which is fairly serious. You can't leave New York State. You can't break the law. You can't hang out with, known felons, et cetera, et cetera. And it's only by the grace of God that I didn't get rearrested, because I was still drinking and doing things I should not be doing, So it was while I was on felony probation that I started attending AA meetings, okay? Another part of my story is that I held on to the same job throughout my drinking, which added to my denial, okay? Now, a lot of people out there, especially professionals, executives, they have great careers, and they use that as a way of denying that they have addiction issues, okay? How can I be an addict if I got this great career? And I had that same kind of thinking. Looking back, I only held on to that job because it was a union job, and my bosses were all these old Irish guys that looked out for me, and they saved my job many times. But they sent me to rehab while I was on probation with the state. My job sent me to rehab. I go to rehab, and I remember that day I was in really bad physical shape, and I was very depressed, and I knew I needed help. So I went. Actually, my job gave me an ultimatum. They said, go to rehab or find another job. So I went to rehab. And I came home from rehab. I lasted maybe a month or two, and I did not have the toolkit to maintain abstinence, okay? I learned a lot about addiction in the rehab, but once I got back home, I realized I'm in big trouble because I don't know what the hell I'm doing to maintain sobriety. And all those old fears came back from my childhood, the fear of people, not feeling good enough. My social skills were very bad at that time, without a drink in my hand. So I started a period of relapsing from 1990 to 1994. Okay. So my last drink was May 28th, 1994. Now, at the end of my drinking, I was living in a furnished room in Long Island City, Queens. It was a very depressing place. I mean, it really was, but it served its purpose because it's all I could afford, So I remember that day, it was a 3-day kind of run that I had, and I was I was walking home. It was a beautiful, sunny Memorial Day weekend, and I just wanted to die. I was walking home with my head down, totally hopeless, wishing for the end. But I had a bunch of phone numbers in my pocket from people in AA and other 12-step groups. So I decided to call somebody and ask for help. I had to get humble and ask for help. If anybody's out there listening, I know that asking for help can be difficult and humbling, but at some point it's absolutely necessary to ask for help. So I did that. A gentleman called me back, and he became what we call my sponsor in AA. And 31 years later, this gentleman is still my sponsor. And he showed me the way. He showed me the way, how to get sober and stay sober. Okay. And, it wasn't easy. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's so well worth it. And I still attend 12-step groups. That's just for me on a daily basis. I like going there. It gives me a chance to talk to newcomers and try to help them find their way, But in my time in sobriety, I faced more major life changes than I ever did drinking, to be honest. I mean, the longer you stay sober and you stay alive, obviously a lot of things can happen, right? So when I was 5 months sober, my mother passed away. She died from a mixture of alcoholism and her mental health struggles, and she ultimately passed away. And it was really tough, but I didn't drink behind it, and I showed up for my family the best I could. I was newly sober at the time, but I did the best I could. And then I was kind of just doing my thing, going to work, attending meetings, and I was building up a good foundation. And then when I was 10 years sober, my father passed away. But that was kind of expected. He was getting older, and he had a host of health issues. And so he passed away when I was 10 years sober. And then when I was 11 years sober, I found out I was going to have a child, which was obviously a major life-changing event. I met a woman in AA, and we got together, and she called me and said, "We're going to have a baby." And I said, "Okay, we're going to have a baby." But it was a major stressor. My daughter's going to be 20 years old in October, actually. That happened when I was 11 years sober. And then when I was 15 years sober, another major life-changing event happened. My union job of 23 years was suddenly taken away from me. I got caught up in a union fighting with another union, and they laid off a bunch of people. So after 23 years on that job, I found myself without a job. Okay. And at the time, my daughter was only 4 years old, and I was very worried about money and finances and stuff like that. But I continued to maintain my sobriety. Okay. Now here's where the good part comes. Losing that job became a blessing, and I'll tell you why. I was not working for maybe 2 or 3 months. And I was going to go back to that line of work, but I didn't really like doing it. I never really liked doing it. It was just a safe job that paid well. So I thought about changing careers. And then God stepped in the form of a person. A gentleman in recovery called me one day. He said, "Tommy, I work at a private sober house in Brooklyn, New York." I said, "Oh, wow, what's a private sober house?" Right? He asked me if I wanted to work there. I said, "Well, I'm not working. Of course, I need a job." So I started working at this private house in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And that's where I learned about the field that I'm currently in, doing private coaching, addiction coaching with private clients, working one-on-one with people, separate from my AA work. So it was during my time at that sober house that I started taking training classes to become a New York State certified addiction recovery coach, and to become an interventionist and a sober companion. So none of this would have happened if I didn't lose my union job. But I'm very grateful that it did happen, okay? Because I started working in this field that I'm currently in. It's been 15 years now. And I started my company 14 years ago, okay? And it's incredibly stressful, exhausting. It will test the limits of your patience and tolerance. Okay. And I've witnessed horrific, tragic things in my time working with clients one on one. I've seen the destruction of families, etc. But I've also seen families reunited and people heal and get well, which is amazing to see. And I get humbled that I was able to be a part of that. Okay. So my primary purpose now is to still help other people. Okay. And not just people with addiction or mental health issues, anybody in general, to be honest. So I'll share one last bit of my story, which is it's a very, very tragic event that happened. I was 26 years sober in 2020. I had a twin brother, my twin brother Tim. My brother Tim had a severe case of alcoholism his whole life. He finally went into a detox. He joined AA. I didn't force him to do anything. He did it all on his own, and he did very well. And I was so happy. My family was so happy. It was incredible to watch. But unfortunately, life on life's terms kind of stepped in. My brother worked for Con Edison, and he was a first responder at the World Trade Center back in 2001. And he spent many months down there working. And all those years later, my brother got sick. He got sick in 2020. And by the time he got sick and we found out he was sick and he passed away in the hospital was 1 month. That's how fast it happened. And it was a punch in the stomach, I'll tell you. It still is. I mean, it was just very sad, and it didn't make any sense. Like, why would that have to happen now? He finally quit drinking. He's happy. He got remarried. His kids were happy, and then this happened. But, for whatever reason, I mean, tragic things happen in life, right? I'm powerless over it. I wish I could change it, but I can't. But I am grateful that my twin brother did get to experience, he was sober 10 months when he died. So he did get to experience 10 months of recovery, which I'm grateful for, and I just miss him. I miss my older brother, my parents. But I got to keep moving forward. And, I'm grateful for this opportunity to share my story with your viewers and to give them some hope that, if your story is like mine, you can come out the other side of it. I think I'm relatively sane after all I've been through, but I take it one day at a time still. And like I said earlier, currently I'm on 2 jobs in Connecticut, and so my career fills my time. I have very little free time, which is good. I like to stay busy. I like helping other people, and my company, Sober Companion Los Angeles, travels around the country, trying to help families with addiction and mental health issues. So again, thank you for this opportunity, Gershon.
Oh no, Tom. I mean, there's so much we could break down now. That story was unbelievable.
Thank you.
I'm gonna. I wrote down some questions that I'm gonna ask. Why did you think you were able to break down and tell the truth to your psychiatrist? I found that very interesting. Was it a relationship? Was it her demeanor, or was it you felt you were in a safe place?
Personally, I don't believe that's true. I see that,
Yeah, because what I'm trying to get at, or very interesting that you said, is, do you know the stats? Like, there's a lot of people that relapse in addiction. And is it the ones that go to rehab because they have the willingness and they're humble enough to finally say, I need help, or the ones who are successful? Like, families put other family members into rehab, corporations put people into rehab, but you always hear about it. They just relapse and relapse and relapse. Is it they need to want to get better? Is there any success stories of people who are not going in for the right reasons that actually stay sober?
Well, personally, I know of many success, if you want to use that word, stories. Okay. Many people go to treatment because they've been given an ultimatum by their family, by their job, by their attorney, or whatever's going on in their life. So whatever gets them in the door of treatment is a good thing. So once they're inside the treatment center, they're going to hear what they need to hear. Regardless if they want to hear it or not, they're going to hear it for the next, whether it be 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. They're going to hear it every day, okay? And that's where many people make the decision, you know what, maybe I really do have a problem. And I share with people all the time, social drinkers don't wind up in rehab. Let's be honest, you know? But again, like I said, alcoholism is very cunning and it will tell you you don't have it. Unfortunately, some people come home from rehab and they relapse. And that could be for a host of reasons. Maybe they're not convinced. Maybe they think they're different. Maybe they think they appease their family by going to rehab. But the hard truth is that if they have real addiction issues, the addiction eventually is going to convince them. Now, many pursue that to the point of death, unfortunately, okay? Because the whole thing is rooted in denial. Denial is so thick with some people that it's really hard to get through to it, But once you've been exposed to a treatment center or the 12-step program or whatever it is you do, that knowledge is with you, okay? And it's up to you whether you want to choose to use that knowledge to change your life and help yourself. I've known clients that have called me on and off for years and they're still not sober. And it's baffling to me because I can see them suffering, but they can't see it themselves. And it's really sad. But I never give up on people who struggle. Okay. If you're struggling, I will still help you. If you're not convinced, I'll still talk to you and try to work with you. It's the kind of guy you see at the bar. They go for a cocktail after work. They feel a little buzz coming on and they stop. Okay. Alcoholics don't have the ability. Well, I believe that alcoholics have a physical allergy to alcohol. That's what I believe. That once an alcoholic starts to drink, there's a physical compulsion inside their body that makes them crave more. Okay. As far as a genetic composition, I go back and forth on that. My family was filled with addiction, but I don't know if that's the reason why I started drinking. I know people with addiction issues that come from families that have no drinkers at all in it, but the one family member is a full-blown addict, and it doesn't make sense because the family doesn't have any issues. Okay. My belief is that addicts and alcoholics are drinking to fill some kind of void, whether it be past trauma, okay, uncomfortability in their own skin, okay, maybe repressed memories from their childhood that they don't want to remember, okay. And once they find that they discover the freedom of alcohol and drugs, they stick with it because it's helping them cope, okay. But I'm a big believer in a physical allergy to alcohol and drinking or using to deal with past trauma that's never been dealt with, in my experience.
Yeah, because personally, I came from a family of alcoholics. They were functioning alcoholics, especially my mom and my dad. And the reason I quit drinking was because once I turned 21, 22, I never got hungover. And so I realized how my mom and dad were functioning alcoholics. And that basically around the age of 35, it scared the crap out of me. And I said, I better stay away from this just with the family history. And I don't drink anymore because of that. But I also hear arguments that people are like, well, you got to be careful because you have an addictive personality. Do you believe in that concept?
Absolutely. I've seen recovering addicts basically switch addictions where they go from drinking to gambling, drinking to sex, drinking to food. Okay.
Drinking
I
to
see
ultra
it.
marathon running.
Yeah. Workaholics, gym rats. They go to the gym 7 days a week for 3 hours a day. Okay. I'm not saying I mean, some of these habits are obviously very bad for you, you know. Um, but I do see that often. I've seen gentlemen in long-term recovery wind up in rehab from gambling without ever picking up a drink. Okay, because they have the addictive personality, you know. And once they find something that gives them the same rush that alcohol gave them, they're going to keep doing it until they face severe consequences.
What's the biggest myth about who struggles with addiction?
Well, the biggest myth, I believe, is that people choose to become an addict or choose to become an alcoholic. Who would voluntarily choose to do that to themselves? You know, the average person says, well, that guy, you know, he's just a junkie. He did that to himself. That is so not true, in my opinion. Okay. Addiction is a physical, mental, and spiritual illness. Okay. And it's not based on willpower or self-knowledge. The average addict does not have enough willpower to say no in the beginning. Okay. And I really dislike when I hear people say things like, well, you know, I don't feel bad for him because, you know, he did it to himself and he wrecked his life. Well, I don't think he willingly wanted to do that. And once you're caught up in it to a certain degree, it's really difficult to get out of it without professional help. I mean, let's be honest. You see the average guy on the street shooting heroin, robbing cars. I mean, you think he wants to do that? Some guys go to jail because they just need a break from getting high. But it's a miserable lifestyle. I haven't met one person who said to me, you know what, Tommy, I like living on the street. I like this way of life. I've never heard anybody say that to me. They say things to me like, I can't stop. I don't know why I can't stop. I'm hopeless. It's not a choice whether to become an addict. I mean, obviously, when you're younger and you pick up a substance, you're doing it voluntarily. I get that. But once that physical allergy kicks in and you cross that line into addiction, you can never go back. I've never seen an alcoholic become a social drinker, ever. So, but that's an important topic to talk about. So thank you for bringing that up.
Now, once you were sober, you had these major life-changing events, very traumatic. What kept you on the straight and narrow path? What kept you from relapsing?
Well, at the time, for instance, my mother passed away. I was only 5 months sober. So I bailed several times. But this was different because my mother had died from a mixture of drinking and her mental health. And when I decided to get sober, I made a decision to not drink no matter what happened to me. Now, when she died, it was incredibly difficult, okay, facing those emotions. But I had the rest of my family around me to support me. And in addition to that, I did have a strong support network with my local recovery groups. I had a lot of friends in recovery who supported me through that as well. Okay. And I didn't spend time by myself during that. I had people around me. Okay. Addiction is rooted a lot of times in isolation. So the opposite of that is connection. Okay. So I was connected to my family, to my sober friends. And also I didn't want to disrespect the memory of my mom by going out and getting high and drunk. I just did not want to do that, you know, but having emotional support with family and friends was probably the thing that got me through that without suffering a relapse. Looking back. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because when you look at my profession with veterinary medicine,
Yeah.
you know, you talked about anxiety and fear leading to a lot of your issues. That was your biggest mental health issues. You just brought up being despondent or isolated. And obviously you talked about a lot of emotional stuff. That is what the profession deals with every day. Every day. Every day. You know, you have the emotional labor of dealing with clients. You have the emotions of euthanizing a pet and dealing with the grief of the family. You have the emotions of, you know, getting reviews online that the whole world can read that are just horrendous at times. And a lot of these veterinarians, especially the early career veterinarians, shut off, and they go home, they ruminate on their issues. They wake up the next morning and worry that the same issues are going to happen again. What is one thing you could tell them right now for mental clarity that could help them so they don't feel as if they need to go to a substance in order to get relief?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I've been through the trauma of having to bring a pet to a veterinarian to have the pet put down. And I mean, it was incredibly sad and stressful. And I felt bad for the people in the veterinarian office who have to deal with that every day, you know? What I would recommend to people in that profession is to seek some kind of outside support group. Okay. In my line of work, when I'm stressed out, I can call another colleague and we talk about what's going on and we kind of sort it out with each other. If I'm having a really bad day and something really traumatic has happened, I would suggest to veterinarians to find another colleague who you feel safe with, who you have a rapport with, who you can talk to about with issues like, negative reviews online, because I know that feeling. Dealing with families that have been through a loss, the stress of the daily grind of trying to help families and their pets. Again, connection is the key. Avoid trying to deal with the situations by yourself. Okay. Now, sometimes the natural desire is I can figure this out on my own. I'm a doctor. I can figure it out. I'm a veterinarian. I can figure it out. Well, sometimes you can't, and you need to get a little bit humble and have some willingness to reach out to a colleague. If not a colleague, then maybe a family friend or a family member. Not to burden them but to talk to somebody just to vent a little bit. Okay, it's keeping things inside it's never a good thing. It's never a good thing. So reaching out for help is important, and there's no shame in it.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not 100% yet, but obviously the stigma of mental. Why do you think professionals have such a hard time asking for help?
Well, I've had several clients over the years, attorneys, Wall Street guys, doctors. So in those kinds of professions, admitting any kind of weakness or being vulnerable is not high on the list of what they do. Okay. They're at the peak of their profession, and they have to be a power of example to a certain extent. And they don't want to show any kinds of weakness or, I need help. Okay. Now, a lot of it could be based in what you brought up about stigma. Okay. The stigma around reaching out for help is less than it was 30 years ago, but it's still there. I mean, don't kid yourself. It's still there. I recommend to professionals that, another thing is that they're very, to a certain extent, afraid about anonymity. They're afraid if they reach out for help, people are going to find out, oh, he talked to a addiction coach or he talked to a recovery coach. And they're afraid of anonymity. Now, when people talk to me, it's 100% confidential. And I assure them that whatever they tell me stays with me. So it could be a mixture of stigma. They don't want people to find out that they're not in a good place, and they don't want to lose their position maybe in the hierarchy of their career for fear of people judging them. Okay.
Do you think they would think that people would judge them as weak?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's a cutthroat world out there, especially in the world of high finance and powerful attorneys and stuff like that. Some places are more open to talking about it than others. Okay. Because I've dealt with clients like that. And it's unfortunate that some of the higher up companies have executives that are very close-minded about issues like this. And it prevents their employees from reaching out for help, which is really unfortunate because these people are suffering in silence, for fear of maybe losing their job or being outed as an addict, And it's really, in this day and age, it's really unfortunate that kind of thinking still exists.
I see both of our professions almost similarly when it comes to the emotional part. How do you avoid emotional exhaustion?
Well, I practice what we call self-care. Okay. Now, my job is not a 9 to 5 job. So far from that. Okay. But I have a team of people that help me, that work for me to lessen the burden on myself. Okay. I talk to somebody once a week, one-on-one, about what's going on. I have my personal recovery support groups that I still attend, and I have friends there that I talk about stuff with. I go to a gym on a regular basis. I try to eat right. I try to sleep right. And if I find myself getting overwhelmed, I take a break. I go somewhere for a week. If my clients they're in safe hands with my employees, and I'll do something like that, because I've seen a lot of people in my line of work get exhausted and stressed out. And unfortunately, some of them go back to using. People in my profession. I've seen that more than once. So if you don't practice self-care, it's going to catch up to you. Just like, if a veterinarian doesn't practice self-care and he lets things build up and build up and build up, as that release is going to come out in a very unhealthy way, possibly, So the things I need to do, I would share with people in other professions to do, including veterinary medicine. Practice self-care. It's very important.
What would you say to someone who has a colleague who and they believe that colleague has a problem? What advice do you give them to approach that colleague? Or because that's another issue. Like you can see someone suffering, but a lot of people are too afraid to get involved, or they're not afraid to get involved. They just don't know the correct way to get involved. What advice could you give to them with that?
Okay, well, an important part of that question would be to find out if the person who is thinking of approaching the colleague, is he somebody lower down on the food chain, or is it a superior,
No,
or is
just
it a
yeah, a
boss?
veterinarian to a veterinarian. Veterinary clinics are very family oriented, so there
Yeah.
really isn't a hierarchy structure as far as
Okay.
within a practice.
Okay. Well, I would suggest to a colleague to sometimes you have to go right up to the person and say, listen, in a general way, listen, I'm just concerned about you. I hope you're doing well. If you need a safe person to talk to, I'm here. Keep it very general like that. You're not going to say to the person, listen, I think you're doing drugs and you better get help. You're not going to say it like that. You're going to say it in a compassionate way. Listen, we've been having a hard time at the office lately. We've had a lot of tough cases. It's taken a toll on me. If you feel like it's taken a toll on you and you need somebody to talk to, we can talk to each other about it. Okay. And it'll stay with us. Yeah. And then you'll see the response from the other person, and they'll let you know fairly quickly if they're open to discussing it. Fairly quickly. They might say, listen, I'm doing fine. I don't want to talk. And then you let it go for now. Or they might be willing right then and there to start talking, you know. But I'm curious how it would work with a secretary in a veterinarian office. Would she be willing to approach the veterinarian himself and say,
Yeah, I guess
listen,
it depends on how much psychological safety is within that office, right? The culture.
yeah, 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 yeah.
A lot of veterinary clinics, even though cultures are different, but they all seem to be family because you spend more time with the people you work with in every profession than you do with your own family. And, I would pray that if you're working in a veterinary clinic, you feel as if you do have that psychological safety to approach the problem. Because, and if I guess, would it be okay? Let's say an employee does not feel comfortable approaching someone. Could they approach the manager or another doctor with their concerns, or is that getting too many involved?
Well, yeah, that becomes a little bit of a murky scene. Unless there's obvious signs that the doctor is not doing well and everyone in the office can see it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The last thing we want to do is start gossip about people. I'm not a fan of that, because that can spiral into all kinds of stuff that is not true. and it's going to hurt the whole atmosphere of that particular office. So I'm not a big fan of kind of ganging up on somebody. I much prefer the one-on-one approach in the beginning. As far as my story, if you saw me right before I went to rehab, I looked like I was in bad shape. So when my boss told me you're going to rehab or you're finding another job, I knew that other people in the office knew what was going on as well. But nobody ever approached me other than my boss at the time. The other coworkers maybe they were afraid to approach me, or they didn't know how to approach me, but they let my boss, the big guy, just deal with it directly. So it can be different though in a small office setting like a veterinarian office. But again, I'm a fan of maybe just a one-on-one approach in the beginning, unless the signs are obvious that the person is really suffering. Then you can possibly plan maybe a mini intervention of some kind.
Yeah, because you said you get involved in interventions. Do people need to? Is it families that reach out to you for that, and how involved do you get? Because do you get involved immediately, or do you have to see that the person that's having the issue really wants help?
Well, how that works is 99% of the time it's the family that calls me. You know, it's very rare that an addict will say, "Listen, Tommy, I need an intervention." They don't do that. It's the family will call me, or the person's job will call me. So what we do is what's called a pre-intervention planning, where I take a history of what's going on with the person and with the family, a very detailed history of what's going on. And I'll meet with the family members several times to discuss a strategy as far as where to plan the intervention, what time, and the location. But the main thing is to get a thorough history of the person affected. Okay. And I also set up in advance the treatment center the person will go to. And I set up in advance how we will get the person there, because on the day of the intervention, if the person agrees to go to treatment, we get him in a car right away, take him to the airport, and get him right there to the treatment center the same day. And all that is set up beforehand with the family. And again, sometimes all this planning goes into effect and it takes maybe a week or so. And then on the day of the intervention, I walk in and the person immediately says, "No, I'm not going anywhere. Get out of my house. I don't know who you are, but get out." And that's happened to me too. So there's no guarantees that every intervention will be successful. That's just the way it is. But it's primarily families that call. Well, first of all, I love meeting families, even in that dire situation. It gives me a chance to give the family is suffering as well. Let's not forget that. Addiction is a family disease. It's affecting everybody in the family. So I give them family coaching as well, and I try to give them hope as well. I don't go into an intervention with expectations. I never say to myself, "Tommy, you're so good that this guy's going to say yes today and he's going to go to rehab and everything is going to be great." I never go into an intervention with that kind of expectation, because I'll be let down. I go in there with the intent to do my job to the best of my ability. I offer help, and it's up to that person whether they want to pick up my help or not. I can't physically drag somebody to rehab. It just doesn't work that way. So
Do you have to wait till they're out of denial?
I have to wait until ultimately they agree to go to treatment. They can still have denial and go to rehab. I've seen a lot of people do that. They still not be convinced, but they'll go to treatment. Okay. So I don't wait until they're out of denial. I wait until they say yes to getting help, because those are two separate things. You can say yes to getting help and still not be convinced. Okay. But at least they're willing to take the first step and go to treatment, which is, I've done my job then.
What would you say to a veterinarian that's afraid to admit they have a problem because they feel that they're going to lose their license or their ability to practice medicine?
Well, like I said earlier, I've had doctors as clients. Okay, so now Now, I'm not a legal scholar, but I do not believe you can get terminated for reaching out for help with an addiction issue. I don't think, as far as I know, that a medical doctor can lose his license for voluntarily going to get help. Okay? He might be more concerned about the stigma once other people find out that he went for help. I mean, there are laws in place that protect people from being discriminated against for getting help. Okay? I think the bigger issue is the veterinarian worrying about what other people might think. People in his office, his family, former patients, former clients, right? Now, if they're that worried about that and they resist getting help, what happens sometimes, unfortunately, is that they get themselves into a jam, a drunk driving arrest, some kind of other arrest, some severe misjudgment at work because they were under the influence. And now they're forced to get into treatment. And in a situation like that, they might lose their license if they get arrested for drunk driving or hurt somebody drunk driving or commit some kind of malpractice at the job while under the influence. So, that's always a risk in the medical field of doctors waiting to get help, because they might get themselves into a situation where they're going to be forced, and then they might lose their career.
What's one thing you wish everyone knew about addiction and recovery? Like the raw wish that you want, not a polished version.
Well, I mean, I would just say that addiction is not a choice, okay? It's a disease, okay? It does not discriminate. It doesn't care who you are, where you come from, how much money you have. Once it gets its hold in you, it's not going away, okay? It's not a moral failing, addiction. There's no reason to feel like a bad person because you can't stop. Addicts are not bad people. They're sick people, myself included. And I haven't drank in 31 years, but I still have addiction. It doesn't go away. It's not a temporary condition. It's not a temporary condition like being sick and having a cold and taking medicine for a week and then you're all better. It doesn't work like that with addiction. Once you have it, you have it. Recovery is not easy. If recovery was easy, everybody would do it. It's not easy. It's incredibly difficult. It takes a lot of work. It takes dedication. It takes open-mindedness. It takes willingness. It takes humility. Humility has a hard time of it in life, but it takes all those things to come together. And then once you have the recovery, in order to keep it, my experience is that you have to do certain things every day to maintain it. Okay? Some kind of support group, some kind of clinical help, maybe 12-step groups. Okay? But what I do is try to help other people suffering. That's the best way for me to keep what I have. Now, when I say that, that's separate from my professional work. Okay? I get paid to help people professionally. In my personal recovery, I need to help people on a daily basis. Okay? And the ultimate end result of addiction, we used to say it would end 3 ways. Okay? Jails, institutions, and death. Some people go right to death, unfortunately. I've seen kids 18 years old, take a pill that they thought was something and it turned out to be fentanyl and they're dead, right? It's a serious thing. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Addiction is deadly. I saw what it did to my brother. I saw what it did to my mother. I saw my father and my other brother suffer from years with it, okay? It's a serious thing, but there is help out there. We're in a day and age now where all you have to do is go on your computer and reach out for help. And people can find me on the internet very quickly if they want to. And, the resources are there to help people. Take advantage of them.
So where can they find you if they want to reach out to you?
Well, I have 2 websites, SoberCompanionLosAngeles.com and SoberCompanionNYC.com. And I'm all over social media. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Just Google my name and I'll pop up. And I'm here to help. Me and my staff are here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do jobs all around the country. I've done jobs in Europe. I'll go anywhere to help anybody in need. I'm fairly easy to find now at this point.
Well, Thomas, thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation today. We're just scratching the surface when it comes to what's going on in society and also in the veterinary field. But the beautiful thing is that people like you bring out that hope. And that hope is very, very inspiring. And even like we said before we even started, even if this episode helps one person, it did its job.
Yeah. Thank you again, Gersh, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And to all the listeners, thank you so much for listening to another. This was a very deep episode of Irreplaceable Truths. But again, if you know someone who needs help or you believe yourself you need help, please, please, please be humble enough to ask for help. We are not perfectionists. We are practicing medicine. So you're not going to be perfect. Be humble and ask for help. With that, we'll see you next time.